Yeah, this weather's draining me.
I'll bet. I can imagine. I can only imagine. Councilman Ioris?
Just a brief update. We met with the Friends of Wrighttown Park in terms of getting their input and what type of structure they would like to see improved from a capital planning perspective. And there are a lot of good ideas that were tossed about. Tom and I are still discussing those, and what we want to do is come up with a prioritized list of which ones we should begin addressing this year, and then schedule out the projects for the next 2 or 3 years.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Councilman Ioris. Anything else?
Not this time. It's just that it's been quite chilly out there, and I think this is one of the coldest Februaries that I've seen in a long time, and a lot of snow. So I hope everyone out there is staying warm and staying safe.
Thank you very much. Deputy Supervisor Villanova.
No comment.
No comment. Thank you. Okay. 2 things. Well, don't let me forget to talk about the March 17th meeting. I think you've already forewarned that I'm not going to be able to make that meeting. But what I'd like to do is give a brief update on Rye-Town dissolution, since we've had some events there. And basically, I've given each of you a sort of a printout that I'll discuss. And then we sent you, but I wanted to give you as well, we sent you about a week ago, the steering committee of the Rye-Town dissolution process has basically been kicked back into gear. And what we've tried to do is pull together, a Rye-Town dissolution at a glance, all the issues that are relevant to Rye-Town dissolution, and then a more comprehensive memo that, again, basically tries to provide for all the issues surrounding an eventual dissolution of the town. So they were sent to you. Again, anybody has any questions, comments, please forward them to the steering committee. Well, the steering committee will be meeting again this Thursday at 11 o'clock. And then once we've gotten the comments from the various municipalities, we're looking to put this online. Again, this process has been a 2,000% transparent process. We want to continue in that vein, so these memos will go online in anticipation of further discussion. So let me tell you sort of where we stand right now. There's one fundamental point that I think it's important people understand. And the first fundamental point is there's 4 municipalities involved in this process, but none of the elected officials in those municipalities will decide to dissolve the town or not. The only thing the elected officials in each of those municipalities are going to decide is whether or not they're going to let the people vote on whether or not we dissolve the town. So obviously they have to feel comfortable that the proposal that goes to their constituents is fair-minded. But at the end of the day, the only thing that the 4 municipalities will be deciding on is whether or not to let the people vote on whether it makes sense for them to continue to have the town of Rye. The second important point is this is a negotiated process. This is a process that requires the input of all 4 municipalities to come up with a proposal or solution that can ultimately be made the subject of legislation. So let me give you an update. So right now, the first component of the process is for each of the 4 municipal boards to vote, and they will vote twice. The first vote has taken place in the village of Mamaroneck and village of Rye-Brook. And basically that vote is to authorize the drafting of home rule legislation. It authorizes the assembly to draft home rule legislation. So a vote took place on February 9th in the village of Mamaroneck. It passed 3-2, and therefore has moved forward. And basically, the village of Mamaroneck had not engaged for a long period of time. With them re-engaged, that's what's basically brought this process forward and had the steering committee begin to meet on a more regular basis. On February 10th, the village of Rye-Brook voted right here 5-0 to authorize the drafting of the legislation as well. Now, for those of you that don't know, Portchester is in the throes of a mayoral election. That election will take place on March 18th. Clearly, that is not a wonderful time for them to be focused on town dissolution, and basically they don't have the time at this point to really focus on the intricacies of town dissolution. So the expectation is, and certainly this is what Mayor Pagano's communicated in the steering committee, is that the hope is once the election is he doesn't feel that he's in a position, since he's outgoing and decided not to run, that he can commit his board to town dissolution, given the fact. So his hope is, he's taking information, his hope is that following the election, the Village of Portchester will take up town dissolution immediately. And one of the reasons we've gone to the trouble of pulling this all together in one place and updating it is so that people can inform themselves. And, you know, I intend to certainly meet with any of the village trustees from any of the villages or anybody to give them an update and want to better understand the issues at hand. So they're expected to vote at the end of March, and then my expectation is that we would vote immediately after that. So I think one of the things we need to think about is I expect we'll have a special meeting to vote on town dissolution. And, you know, I would expect that to be at the end of March or in early April. And I guess we would decide that at the March 17th meeting when we would vote on town dissolution. If all 4 municipalities vote to pass and approve and authorize the drafting of home rule legislation, the legislature would then do their work, and in April they would basically draft legislation for the dissolution of the town, basically taking their marching orders from the steering committee and the 4 municipalities in terms of what to do with Wright Town Park, what to do with Crawford Park, tax collection, assessment, those kinds of things. At least proposed solutions. They would draft the legislation, and then each of the 4 boards would get a second vote, a second bite at the cherry, where you look at the legislation. Does it reflect what was agreed? Does it still make sense? Were we still in favor of it? And then each of these 4 municipal boards would vote again in early May. Early May. Provided if all 4 municipalities vote to let the people decide, then what would happen is it would go to a referendum. And one of the decisions, again, that is going to need to be made is when is that referendum going to take place? And again, please, our board should begin to think about it. We put these issues here for you to think about. Would it take place in November, coincidental with the election, or would you have it occur beforehand, September, October? So these are the kinds of issues that still need to be resolved in a dynamic process of this nature. But if basically all 4 municipalities did indeed decide to vote in favor a second time, then the people would decide. It would go to referendum, whatever date is ultimately decided. And on that referendum date, each of the 4 municipalities has to vote again. This is one of the issues that came up in Rhinebeck. The people of Rhinebeck were very concerned. They said, well, wait, what if we vote against? Can it be forced on us? And no, it cannot. So each of the 4 municipalities has to vote in favor. This can't be forced on anybody.
What's that vote? 51% of the
Yep.
voting population
Of
of each
Rhinebeck.
municipality?
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. So if 51% of the people in Rhinebeck decide they don't want it, the whole thing comes undone. So as you can see, it's a labyrinth of a process. It's a difficult process. My commitment, more than anything, is to make it transparent. Let people, everybody in this board's worked hard to bring this process forward, and basically I'm committed to transparency and helping the people on this board make an informed decision and if it gets to that far, the public to make an informed decision. If all 40 municipalities and constituents decide to vote, you still would require probably another 14 months to dissolve the town. So if the constituents vote in favor, assuming it took place in November, you basically would have another 14 months. So dissolution of the town would not finally occur until December 31, 2016. So, this is very different than the transactions I worked on Wall Street and corporate finance. I've never worked on a transaction 8 years in the making, But I'm thrilled that we're finally going to come to some resolution. At a minimum, I think the proposition deserves a vote, and I'm very confident we'll get to that. So I don't know if anybody on the board had any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one quick question, Supervisor Carmen, with
Please.
regards to the home rule legislation. Who said that they're going to prepare that legislation?
Well, the Assembly, so that's Assemblyman Otis and State Senator Latimer.
Okay.
Yep. Working obviously very closely with the steering committee.
Okay. And so the vote at the Assembly and the Senate level, how does that impact?
Well, if they don't vote for it, it doesn't happen. So they have to vote for it as well.
Right. So that's not.
Actually, you're right. I should put that in
Right.
here. Yep.
Okay.
Good point. Yep.
So that happens. That happens between 4 and 5. Number 4 and
No,
5.
I think it's after our May vote. So after we vote in May, it happens between 4 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah,
4 and
between
5,
4 and 5. So
Yep.
if all 4 municipalities, so all 4 municipalities approve to go forward, ultimately we tell the legislators that
to bring it to a vote at the legislature, and they would. You're
no,
right.
they prepare the home rule legislation.
Yep.
They give us the home rule legislation, the 4 municipalities, and we may love it and then vote right away. We may say it needs to be redrafted with changes. Then it goes back to them. So the timeline that's here is conservative, right? But if at the end of the day, before it goes to public referendum, it has to pass the Assembly and the Senate.
Yes, it's as you're absolutely correct to point out. It's a challenging time frame. It's a challenging timeline. And as I said, that's why there's 2 points. One is let the people vote, but the second one is a negotiated process. And so people have to engage. Each of the municipalities has to engage in order to come up with a solution. And so you're absolutely correct. Hopefully we'll get it right the first time, but yes, there is risk. There's a risk that it get delayed, and that's not insignificant.
I would say that the only risk is that I mean there's a lot of risk, but the only risk that I see here is just that 12/31/2016 time. That's going to be hard. I think
it'd be hard to achieve.
It's aggressive,
that is aggressive.
but
Once the vote's taking place.
To set up departments. Well, I mean, I think I think you have to cross that bridge when you
Right.
come to it. I
Right.
think if you get that far
Right.
into the process, then
This update helps, though.
yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
You can
Well,
get into the detail a little bit more.
and I would encourage everybody to look at the town dissolution at a glance. If you think about it, it's actually quite interesting. Rye-Town provides 3 core services. What are the core services? Tax collection, assessment, and courts.
And parks.
Well, no. Core. I broke it up into core services. Again, you obviously can conceptualize it any way you want. But the core services, and again, if you look to, I've made a commitment to Town Clerk Vespia, Honorable Mr. Becca. But if you think about it, if you go up to the 3rd floor, the obvious solution would be for the village of Rye Brook and the village of Portchester to engage that existing team. You just change the name on the door and pick up those costs and share those costs. Similarly for the courts. The court, in other words, a lot of the hard work we've already done is facilitated and eventual. So those are the core services. Then you have the parks. And you have to figure out how you're going to operate Crawford Park, and you have to figure out how you're going to operate Rye-Town Park. That's it. Those are the principal decisions that need to be made. So if people get into a room and engage, it's achievable. But you're absolutely right, Deputy Supervisor Lanova. It's a challenging timetable, but it's achievable if people get in a room and engage. Good. Any other questions, comments? No. Terrific. Okay. Now can I get a motion to go in executive session to discuss these contract negotiations?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Hope, call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will not be coming back into public session.
No, we'll not be coming back to the public session. So our friend downstairs, thank you very much. I want to thank the Village of Rybrook for the services.
Lovely.
I don't know where the camera is, but
Right there.
is that okay? Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. You know, Portchester focus on my bald spot, which is always disappointing.
Okay, so that's
Thank
it.
you. Yep.